Dirty Moderates, welcome to a very special edition of Dirty Moderate. As we mark the second anniversary of one of the saddest and most sordid days in our nation's history, the January 6th attack, the insurrection on the Capitol. And this podcast, as I say time and time again, but it can't be said enough, is a podcast that is not partisan, that is not rooting for one team on a regular basis over the other, but is rooting for democracy, rooting for the country, and rooting for our American way of life. And never in my life did I think we would see what we all witnessed 2 years ago on this date, when an angry mob, not a peaceful protest, not legitimate political discourse, attacked the Capitol, egged on by a president who continued to lie about the election to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. And they attempted a coup, which failed, but at great cost. And the people that were there that day, those that lived to tell about it, will thankfully shared their story. And we are joined today by very special. She has never given an interview before. She was fourth in command of Capitol Police on that day and for a number of years. Her name is Stephanie Fulcher. I was more than honored to have her join me here on Dirty Moderate, and I am eager to share that interview with you. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we shout out to the January 6th committee and all the members of law enforcement, of course, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, for their intrepid bravery, for their courage and commitment to America, country first, to all the law enforcement officers like Stephanie who were injured, and in honor, of course, those who were fallen like Brian Sicknick and others. Anyway, without any further ado, and I will be here for a Q&A after, and we will reflect on the interview and all things January 6th. But without any further ado, I give you my interview with Capitol Police Officer Stephanie Fulcher. Dirty Moderate's very special edition of Dirty Moderate today, as we commemorate, I think, certainly, if not the darkest, one of the darkest days in American history, January 6, 2021. We record this ahead of time, but you'll be hearing this either on the 6th itself or thereafter. And everybody knows that this podcast was basically created, and I always thank you guys for listening. And watching us grow this past year. Podcast was created to save democracy one episode at a time, because nothing else matters if we don't have a national agreement, right? If we don't have a idea of what America is, and if we don't live up to our ideals, if we don't defend the Constitution, stand by the country, then being a Democrat or being a Republican or being an independent or being a libertarian really are irrelevant, because we don't have the glue that binds us. And we saw on January 6th, we all watch it with our own eyes. We have covered the hearings here, the absolute near toppling of a government. The first time we haven't had a peaceful transfer of power in this country, and a real blot on what I thought was the progress we were making. And of course, you guys know how I feel, an absolute legacy, the tarred and tarnished legacy of Donald Trump and MAGA. So anyway, I am pleased to announce somebody who I'm so happy is here. I've just recently gotten to know her, and I want her to share her story with you. She was a Capitol Police officer on that fateful day, January 6th. Her name is Stephanie Fulcher, and I welcome her to Dirty Moderate. Stephanie, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Stephanie, let's just go back to the beginning, since, I like to ask guests what's going on and where they're from. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because obviously we're going to get into the weeds about the nitty gritty about all this stuff. Tell us where you came from and how you got to where you got, and so on and so forth.
Sure. So I'm originally from New York City. I'm Queens. Upon, graduating, I joined the military. I did 5 years active duty. I then left there and went to the post office for 5 years. And then I left there and was going to school at night while I was at the post office. to become to get into law enforcement. That was my dream. I read an article about postal inspectors, and I decided that's what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I didn't, or so maybe I should say fortunately, I didn't get on with postal inspectors, but Capitol Police got me instead, and that's where I've been for the last 22 years until I recently retired, May 31st, 2021.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess congrats on retiring, although I know the ending of your term there wasn't so great because of those events. But what branch of the military were you in?
Army.
Oh, Army.
Okay. Yes, I was stationed at Fort Bragg. I did 3 years active duty at Fort Bragg. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Oh, wow.
And I had 16 jumps, successful jumps. And
wow.
And right after I got off of active duty, I went straight into the reserves and stayed there until September 30th, 2021. I retired like kind of back to back from Capitol Police and the military.
Real quick, I like this 16 jumps. I mean, we hear the 82nd Airborne, again, a very heroic division, very decorated division of the Army. Can you just tell us about like a couple places? Are you able to share like where you jumped and what that was like?
Well, women can't, when I joined, women didn't go into combat, and we certainly don't jump into combat. Right. So all my jumps were pretty much training jumps. They were all, 5 of them were at Fort Benning. That was through training. Then I graduated. I went to Fort Bragg and got assigned there. And all the rest of my jumps were at Fort Bragg, different drop zones on Fort Bragg.
Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, wow. So the military too, and I like the whole postal service little deviation there, right? Mm-hmm. And now you just Capitol Police. I can't imagine what you experienced or what you saw that day or how you saw it. But again, just to sort of give, which I think is also good for our conversation, some background. When the insurrection happened and you heard about things, where are the police, where is the National Guard, all these questions. And then you start to learn about the Capitol Police and all the people that, at least that we've seen on CNN and testified and all that stuff. I really wanted to go back and say, I mean, I know I actually worked on Capitol Hill, so I know, but can you tell everybody what the Capitol Police are? I mean, just back to basics. I mean, I know what it sounds like, but what do they do? What did you do prior to January 6th? What's the day in the life of a Capitol officer like?
Well, they call us America's Police Department. Okay. We provide security to members of Congress, visiting dignitaries, and also the public that's coming to visit to see the Capitol. So we have different departments within the department, the House Division, the Senate Division, and then the Capitol Division. We have Patrol Division. We have Dignitary Protection, which travels with members of leadership in in Senate and House. We also have the bomb squad. We're like I'm not saying we are a regular police department. Only difference is our jurisdiction is Capitol Hill and the surrounding area. We have extended jurisdiction, and we again, we are federal, so supposedly we have police power in all 50 states. We can carry our weapon pretty much anywhere. And the day in life of a Capitol Police, that would depend on what section you worked at.
Okay.
I worked for the House Chambers section.
Okay.
So that is, if anybody watches C-SPAN 1, that's the House Division, and C-SPAN 2 is the House Chambers, and C-SPAN 2 is the Senate Chambers.
Right.
I'm in that room where Congress meets every day, sometimes all day.
Right. I know, right.
Right. And my job basically is to make sure that Congress is not disrupted, because it's an arrestable offense, and that the people viewing Congress, which is the American public, they are
the gallery above, right?
Mm-hmm. They're allowed to come in and watch, and my job is to really watch them. I was on a department for 22 years,
Right.
and I moved up the seniority list to allow me to be a permanent plainclothes officer, because the rule is you can't wear the uniform in the chamber while they're in session.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I'm in plain clothes, and I'm kind of like supposed to be blending in with the
We wouldn't know you. We
public.
would see, if I was watching C-SPAN, which I do, I wouldn't know who you were. I might think you're a congressional aide or something, right? Is that what it's like?
Right. If they were to show the cameras that way, they usually don't.
Plain clothes, is that like you wear a suit or like I
Yes.
mean, you have to look respectable, right?
Right. Everything is hidden.
Right.
So, I would remove you if you didn't adhere to the law. However, everyone gets in order to come in to view Congress, you have to have a gallery pass. And on the back of the gallery pass, there are rules, and they're the Sergeant of Arms rules, which are not laws, but they are rules, and you have to adhere to them, or else you can be removed. You won't be arrested, but you will be removed. Now, if you was to disrupt Congress or to throw a shoe or something, yes, then you would be arrested.
Right, of course. Right. Has anyone ever thrown a shoe? Has someone done that?
No, but someone on the Senate chambers threw money over the ledge.
Oh boy.
Yes. So
I'm sure they were Are they arrested? That's arrestable?
Yes.
Yes. Wow, of course.
They talked about putting a plexiglass, all the way around the chamber, which would have been horrible. I hope they never moved to that. But, after the shoes got thrown at, I think it was former President Bush.
Remember, he was in Iraq and he ducked. I couldn't believe his athletic instincts, right? His timing. That was a video. It was unbelievable. He just looked like he knew it was coming. But yes, obviously that would be an arrestable offense. So most of the days, right, of your service, people come to Congress. They watch. Obviously, when Congress is in session, they're really in session, and you're on, command, on guard, watching this. And I would say a lot of days are probably uneventful, right? I mean, you're not, every day is not, an escapade or an exciting adventure, right? Right. And do you report to the Sergeant at Arms?
No, we report to Capitol Police. We usually have roll call 30 minutes prior to Congress going in session, and then we take our post. We rotate every 45 minutes throughout the day, so that you're not in the same place all day. And you're right. Most days it is uneventful, but we know in advance a lot of times if it's going to be a real controversial vote. And of course, you're going to have people come up there who may contact Capitol Police and let them know they're going to get arrested. And then some who are just that passionate about what's being said, and they just kind of lose it and don't realize they're going to get arrested, and they may, act out and then get arrested. But for the most part, most days is uneventful.
Okay, so there's literally people that call up and say, look, I'm going to be a total riotous asshole and I'm going to get arrested. Literally, they're like, I hate this and I'm going to cause a scene, just so you know, arrest me if you will.
Absolutely. Like they usually come in groups. Right.
And wow. And so you guys arrest them, obviously, when they breach any of these regulations or rules, and they go to jail for the night. How does that work?
Well, they know the system better than we do. They'll say we're coming out with 45 people.
Wow.
15 of us are going to get arrested. Our lawyers will be there to bail them out, or or be there for them once they finish all of their paperwork. So we have holding, not very many, but we have holding cells there on Capitol Hill.
Wow.
But if it's a mass arrest, most of the time we just do the paper and we give them citation, release, and they have to come back and show up to court.
Right.
And also if it's more serious offense, then of course we will link up with Metropolitan, and then they'll take the arrest. We will make the arrest, but we'll turn them over to them.
Right, because your jurisdiction is the capital and a little bit of the surrounding area. You beyond
Right.
that, right. Interesting. Yeah. Well, they're a lot of these people are believe in they don't have a right to do what they're doing, but they have a right to civil disobedience outside, I guess, right?
Outside. Right.
You just can't come in and
Right.
there's protocols exactly. So you've been at the Capitol so 22 years. So you were there for 9/11. I mean, you were there that
was.
day. Oh, the Capitol wasn't attacked,
Yes.
obviously, 9/11, but the Pentagon was. Many inaugurations, like you said, dignitaries, popes, kings, all that stuff. I mean, so you've lived through it. And then, of course, sort of culminating in January 6th. Boy, you had a turbulent number of years, not for you specifically, but the country's gone through a lot.
Oh, yes.
Do you did you feel, because January 6th, like so much of those years and like so much of our politics now was really, I think, a reflection of such deep divisions and the sort of toxicity at the heart of our politics and the rotting of the kind of American soul, right? That we could witness that a free and fair election would potentially be overturned, that 81 million votes would be invalidated, that there would be all sorts of stuff that we, think happens in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a divisive day. We are going to get to that, but I want to sort of lay the groundwork. Was 9/11 a time when you all felt unified and proud? Because I did, living in New York. I mean, did you, as part of DC and your being a federal officer, did that seem like despite the awful tragedy, did it feel like a kind of high watermark in the unity of your
Absolutely.
force? Yeah.
Absolutely. There were people who were, before the call came out for everyone to report in, there were people who were volunteering on their day off. I know one young lady, she was out and about. She just showed up to the Hill, no uniform, no vest, no nothing. She's like, where do you want me? Where do you want me? So people, they were we were definitely unified. We were proud to protect that building. We stood out on the yellow double line all the way around the entire Capitol, arm lengths apart from each other. For, I think we got off that evening at 7 and I started that morning at 8:30.
And the planes hit around there, right? 30 or 9. I can't remember which.
We had just gone in session.
You had just gone in session. Right. Wow. And, you fast forward to a day like January 6th. Now, obviously, you're in DC. Are you like outside DC somewhere? Is that where?
In Maryland. Southern Maryland.
Southern Maryland. Yeah. And I've spent a lot of time in Chevy Chase and Arlington, all those places. So, for that day of work, a few days prior, do you remember odd things? We've heard about some of those house tours that went on, which felt kind of like reconnaissance. Did you feel, because there was a lot of planning of this online on Parler with the Proud Boys and stuff. Were you guys alerted to potential trouble? Not necessarily an insurrection, but take us through like the lead up to the day and what happened to you on that day and how that either surprised you or confirmed your worst fears or.
So for me, I didn't I don't recall the officials making a big deal of it.
Okay.
We didn't get any extra intel. Usually we get messages sent through our department cell phone. We didn't get anything.
Can I interrupt real quick? Is that unusual that you didn't get any intel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would get something. A lot of times, they would have, especially like let's say the concerts that we have every 4th of July and Memorial Day and Labor Day. Okay. They have units out, gathering intel. Even during that day, they have units out, kind of blending in, letting us know, they're moving down the street from this location, a group of people that might be up to something. You know, we would get something the
Right, of
whole
course.
way to the Capitol. We got a very little bit of that on that day, but leading up to it, no. I got more information from the TV and family members than I did from my officials. I had a cousin who begged me not to go to work, and I told him I could not go to work. I mean, I took an oath. I said I couldn't. How can I not go to work? He's like, I'm reading all kind of stuff. You shouldn't go. You shouldn't go. I said, we'll be good. We'll be good because leave wasn't canceled for anyone.
No.
People, was still off. People called in sick. It felt like another day until I got to work and my assignment was changed. Normally, I'm not where they had me. I thought that was odd. And I started to make a stink of it. But I said, you know what? There's a reason for me being here. Let me just go with it.
You were reassigned from the House chambers to where?
To the Senate door. I'm a chamber officer. Chamber officers stay on chambers when Congress is in session. Okay. That's what we do. That's what we train for. We know the evacuation procedures. We know the lockdown procedures. We stay with our unit. So for me to be put at the door, I'm still in the Capitol.
Sure.
But not only am I not on the House side, which I work House chambers, I was put on the Senate side of the Capitol and working an interior door. Yeah, I was inside the exterior door. Yeah.
Inside. You were the interior exterior door.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And were you, so when you were reassigned though, and this is where this story starts to get so awful, but also so important to hear. Had the siege begun, but they hadn't yet breached inside the Capitol, or were you just reassigned there in that nothing had quite occurred yet?
Right. Nothing had occurred yet. This was early morning.
Oh, right. Because it happened after the Trump's speech at the Ellipsis. It was like the afternoon. Right.
So, usually it's a 2-man post. I'm there with another guy that I don't normally work with. I've seen him from time to time. We speak. We're cordial. I can't even remember his name. I know who he is. I just can't remember his name. And, we're just going through the day. Everything seemed a little tense, but, it is what it is. We're doing what we're supposed to do. And again, Congress was in session, so I should have been in plain clothes and inside the gallery.
Well, that's what I mean. So you get relocated rather to the Senate, to that interior exterior door of the Senate chambers,
in uniform.
In uniform. Okay. So you were told the day before wear uniform, obviously.
Yeah.
Or no, you changed there, or how does that work?
I think I can't remember, but we're always supposed to have a uniform on. Handy.
Right.
So I'm not sure if I came in a suit and I changed once I got the schedule, or if I looked on the schedule the day before. I can't now. It's
it's a blur. I only asked that because it's interesting that you might have been on the schedule to wear a uniform in front of the Senate door, which really has kind of sinister meanings to it if you think about it. Like, why would you be based on what occurred, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I asked the question later on. But it was so much going on at that point. Nobody even cared. You're fine, right? You're fine. But again, I'm number 4 or 5 in seniority. There was no reason for me not to be on the House chambers inside the gallery when they're in session. Just doesn't happen.
And so, all right, so you're relocated. The day begins, obviously. Now, granted, it had to be in the air. And of course, your relatives who were warning you not to go in because, we were hearing all these things and, potential plots of sedition. And they knew there'd be a Capitol rally, a Stop the Steal rally. Donald Trump had still not conceded the presidential election. He still actually, to this day, has not conceded the 2020 election, which he lost handily. And so there was this sort of chill in the air. There must have been, right, without being specific or coming in a kind of corrupt way from the top about we sort of have to be on guard. We're certifying the election today. there's been a lot of, that transition period was, according to an official in the Biden White House now, the most dangerous transition in our history because of the stuff that the outgoing administration did, which is not this conversation, but also kind of plays into the undermining of our institutions, the undermining of the rule of law. Talk about your colleagues. Were other people reassigned oddly? Did you notice anybody when you went to the Senate? Did you say, "Oh, there's a guard there, I never saw that guy or that gal," or was anything like that? That was.
So when I went back over to the House side later on, after everything had happened, I saw quite a few officers who don't normally work the chambers. As a matter of fact, they normally work one of the doors that I was at. And I was like, that's weird. Why is she over here? And this particular individual actually got a finger broke trying to lock down one of the gallery doors because she wasn't familiar on how to lock the door down.
Right.
I still can't figure it out, but things happen for a reason. And I just, normally my personality, I would have been in a sergeant's face going, what's going on? So why am I not here? But I took it more so that particular day as a sign. Maybe it was the reason I wasn't supposed to be there. And I didn't argue it, but I was annoyed. And but I did what I had to do at that door.
Well, and also you probably, and I only know this from knowing lots of people in law enforcement. I know it from just life. You probably had a subliminal instinct or a gut feeling that wasn't the day. You weren't just challenging procedure. You would have been challenging something that didn't add up. Maybe, it's hard to know, right? But you certainly, knew something was off. So at the time of I remember watching and seeing them kind of go to the Capitol thinking, oh, well, that's it. They'll stop them there. They'll arrest them, just as an observer of politics, just as a citizen watching this. And then my friend who works for ABC News texted me and said the Capitol's been breached. And I went, what? And I said, they're in. He goes, no, some people are now inside. And I knew it wasn't a conspiracy because I thought, oh my God. And so where were you standing? What did you hear? Did you hear a roar? I mean, in other words, at what exact time was it? Do you remember? I should know this. But
time
is a blur. It doesn't matter. It was in the middle of the day. It was a horrible time. Let's say that.
I know I'm standing there with my partner, and the Capitol, because we are the center of everything.
Yeah.
When we're in uniform, we have to be in full uniform. We always have to wear our hats. You can go over to the Senate side and the House side, and you'll see officers without hats. It's not a big deal. But at the Capitol, you must wear your hat. So 22 years of me wearing my hat, I keep my hat on.
Right.
That particular day, when we started hearing all of this chatter on the radio, that was, you can tell by the people who are transmitting their radio calls and how stressed out they were sounding. I kept walking back and forth, pacing. And then I got to the point where I just was so feeling like a caged rat, not knowing what's going to happen. I just got frustrated and took my hat off and tossed it. Just kept walking back and forth. And then all of a sudden we heard the doors locked down on their own. We were waiting for the call on the radio for us to lock the doors down.
And you heard the doors locked down. Which doors? The Senate doors?
The Senate doors. Mm-hmm. So the Senate doors are right under the Senate stairs.
Yeah, I remember that. I worked for the Senate. I interned for a senator and a congressman. I remember that now that you say it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I follow you there.
So sometimes you would, in my mind, I was like, oh, we're going to be okay because we're under the stairs. Nobody's going to even know that there's a door under here unless, they've been to the Capitol. It's in a carriage area.
Right.
So, so he looked at me and I looked at him. I said, did you do anything? Because we can press a button to lock the door down. And he said, I ain't touched nothing. I said, well, I didn't either.
Wow.
And then I think so we left it at that. We said, okay, things must be getting ready to start. So we're going back and forth.
Wow.
And now we're hearing all kind of distress calls and, saying that they breached the bottom of the walkway, Maryland walkway.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
Pennsylvania Walkway and Maryland Walkway. That's where that was the first line of, that they crossed.
Got it. Yep.
And then they got to where the fountain is to go up the stairs to the Lower West Terrace door. And they reached that, and we're hearing the calls, and we're hearing the stress, and I'm like pacing. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's happening?
You're all armed, obviously. You're all armed.
Oh yeah. There was also a call that went out that told the officers that are all the way at the top to bring the guns in. They have the long guns.
You talk about at the top of the rotunda there? Is that what you mean?
No. At the top of the west front.
Yeah.
At the very top, which is, you can walk around the top of the Capitol all the way to the other side.
Oh, yes. I see what you mean. Yeah.
So that's where they are with the long guns.
Okay.
An official called out and said, I need anybody with a long gun to bring it inside. We don't want to take the chance of them getting those from us.
This was an official an AR-15. What's a long gun?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay. I mean, obviously,
I know it's not a rifle.
It's
not a Glock. It's a long gun.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. So I remember, and I'm telling you this because that this is important.
No, I believe you.
This official made this call. That was probably the smartest call he could make, because he's right. If they had gotten those away from those officers, what could have happened? That's not in a holster, not like our handgun.
Sure.
You would have to do a whole lot of fighting to get it out of the holster. So
sure,
that was a smart move. Nobody talked about that. Not on any of the hearings, not in any of the interviews, nothing. That was a good call. Nobody talked about that.
And that call was made by the chief?
Nope. That was made by a lieutenant.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll put a pin in that. But and so then as we go on, you start hearing calls for water. They've been sprayed with bear spray.
Right.
And the guy was like panicked. He literally says, my guys are getting creamed over here. I need all your assets. Send water, send anybody you can to help.
Right.
So now I say to my partner, I say, listen, this is getting crazy. Right. I said, by then they had breached, and then now they start making their way around to come to the east front. And that's the side where my door is. I said, listen, let me run to the restroom before they get over here, because I don't know what we're going to, face. So he holds down the door. I go to the restroom. I come back. He goes to the restroom. If you look, when you go into the restroom, if you look at the north door, there's an officer standing there, but she's by herself. At least my door has a two-man post. Her door is a one-man post. So she says, can you hold this down for me while I run to the restroom? Right. I get an opportunity to look out the window because her door faces the walkway to go around from the west front over to the east front. Right. And I'm just watching the droves of people in the grass on around the top of the Capitol walkway. And I'm just watching. So I say to him, I say, hey, get ready. It's a lot of people coming. So she comes out the restroom. I go back to my post, and we're just waiting. Now we're just waiting to get whatever's going to happen. It's a sick feeling when you're waiting to be attacked.
Oh, yeah. And also in the history of your career and all the 22 years, you've never had this happen, obviously. And you probably have never felt this in danger, right?
Right. So next thing you know, we hear glass breaking.
Oh, yeah.
If you're standing where the information desk is, like if you come into the Capitol and you need to get a pass to go somewhere, there's a Senate information desk. If you're standing right there, you can see the Senate door and you can see the north door.
Right.
Well, the glass is coming from our left. It's a little corridor down there. the walkway going over to the house side. We hear the glass breaking.
Right.
And first we heard just boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden we start hearing the glass breaking. I said, hey, I said, if they get in here, they're going up to the Senate floor. We need to go. So the three of us took off and we went to the Senate floor. Well, the Senate lobby, which is right off from the floor. We all dispersed our different directions. By the time I get to the door, the sergeant had closed the door and locked it. And I'm banging on the door. And his name was Sergeant Timberlake. I said, Sergeant Timberlake, let me in. He unlocks it. He lets me in. He says, stay right here and don't let anyone in. 2 seconds later, I'm standing right beside a 6'4" Secret Service agent. And he says, if we're going to move him, we got to move him now. We got to go now. Okay. So he goes to unlock it. And I said, no, my sergeant said you can't open this door.
Right.
So he says, we got to go. And he's getting ready to do it anyway. So I yell for Sergeant Timberlake. Sergeant Timberlake comes back. I said, he wants to open the door. He says to him, if we're going to move him, we got to move him now. And he was like, all right, let's go. He says, lock the door behind me. He unlocks it. They go out. I watched them take the vice president out and the whole entourage with him.
So you saw Pence, you saw him?
Yep. And my sergeant led them, and I locked the door back, and I stayed there until someone else came and got me and told me to go to the other end of the lobby and stay there until we're going to move, until we begin to move the senators out of here. And I stayed there until we got the call and said, let's go. And we led them out. They had to go down a staircase. This is where I said I saw a lady had on heels and she had the big box, and another senator says, here, let me take that. And she snatched it. I mean, very in the meanest way I've ever seen. And she just proceeded on down the stairs, heels and all, with this box. At that time, I had no idea what it was. I found out later on.
A box. You said it's a box, and she snatched it. And who was this lady? She was one of the
one of the clerks.
The clerks. And go in a little more detail of that. Why did she snatch it? What was
it? Was to the certification.
Yeah.
It was all the things that they were going to read out. I don't know if they were ballots or whatever it was, but that was her responsibility. And apparently it would be equivalent to the mace on the House side. Yeah. Nobody touches it.
No, that's right. So maybe she didn't want to hand it to a senator that she knew might, well, no senator should have it, but obviously she might have thought it was one of the, people who weren't going to certify.
Well, I didn't take it as that. I took it more as that was her responsibility. And I mean, and at whatever cost, but she made it down those stairs, and I kept reminding them, please don't run, but move briskly. Please don't run, because we're hearing everything on the radio. They only are hearing what we're telling them.
Right.
And they want to stop and ask questions, and they was talking to each other. I was like, we don't have time for that. Let's keep moving.
Where were you taking them to? A safety location?
Over to the Senate side, one of the Senate office buildings.
Right.
And that was the holding area until they was able to account for every senator.
Right.
So we led them down the spiral staircase down to the subway.
Right.
And we got halfway through the subway when the call came out for shots fired.
All right.
And that was the shooting over on the House side.
Was that Ashley Babbitt? Was that?
Yes.
Yeah. What was that, Officer Morris? What was his name?
Who?
Eugene. Who was the officer that was?
Oh, who did the shooting?
Yeah.
I'll let you look into that.
All right. I think it was Morris. Yeah. Okay.
But when I heard that, I mean, my heart just dropped, because that's my section. That's who I work with. So I ran. So what they did was they put uniforms in the front of the line and uniform officers in the back, and they intertwined us plainclothes officers within the ranks of the senators. And so I ran up to the sergeant. I said, "Listen," I said, "I gotta go. I said, I'm House Chambers. I gotta go. I gotta find out, if they need me. I can't just." He says, "Listen, you're with this package. you stay with this package. And he would not let me leave. And I mean, I just was like, I didn't know what to do. I was, so anyway, so we get over to one of the Senate office buildings, and at that time, you know, you could like rest a little. They brought in food for the senators, and they brought, you know, they allowed us to eat as well. And they had a lot of the officers escorting senators back to their office. We were getting messages that Senator so-and-so is locked in their office. Well, we wanted everybody in the same location, so they were sending officers to go get them, to bring them there. And then I had an opportunity to actually go back over to the Capitol and see what had happened, who had gotten shot. I mean, you know, when the call first goes out, we were confused. Was it an officer? What happened? And I got over there and I spoke to one of my colleagues who I worked with every single day. He was a senior officer, not as senior as I, but he's been there quite a while. And he was very shook up, and I asked him if he knew what happened, and he told me what he thought and who he thought did the shooting. And he resigns like 6 days later.
Wow. He resigned because he just said, I can't take it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And where were you after, obviously, you know, one of the things we learned through the committee is, I don't know, were there 140 or so Capitol officers there that day? How many? Does that sound right?
Oh, no. It's way more than that.
Way more than that. Okay. That's what we know. Okay. Good to know. So what'd you say? More like 400 or 500? How many?
So we had, last that I knew, we had 1,600 officers.
Oh, wow.
But that's, you know, if every officer was counted.
Yes.
But again, you had people on leave, you had people out sick, you had people on light duty, you had people, you know, on evening shifts. Right. Usually when we have something like that, evening shift comes in early.
Right.
Midnight shift stays over.
Right.
It's all hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
That wasn't the case.
Wait, okay, let's stop there. This was not an all hands on deck day?
No. I got a girlfriend who just retired November 30th. She was off that day. Never told to come in, never told to come in the next day, nothing.
Right, because normally when this broke out, everybody would be called, whether you're on leave, whether you're home, you need to get in immediately, and that did not occur.
Right.
And we now know there was 180 minutes or something with the National Guard, 187 minutes where the National Guard wasn't called. We know about that from the hearings and from what we know or what we've been told. You were not in the throng of people in the sort of lobby of the Capitol where that one officer was jammed in the door and almost killed. Were you right there with all those folks ever, or no? You secured the senators and ended up taking them to the holding area, and you didn't return to what would be your post until after Capitol was clear?
After the Capitol was clear, I came over there. It was soon enough after the Capitol was clear, but it still, the blood was still there. I could see where the glass was broke. I went back to my post because I left. Remember I told you I never take my hat off, and I left. Yep. I took my hat off. I left my hat there, and my hat has my plate on it. So I was sure that they would have, if they got into that door, they would have stolen my hat.
Right. Of course.
I got a trophy. I got a Capitol Police officer's hat with the badge number.
Yeah.
My hat was still there, my water bottle, my reusable water bottle.
Right.
And the door that I was at was not breached. They broke the window beside it and then came and pushed the door. And the door that I told you that young lady was at by herself, they did the same thing. They broke the window beside it and then came in and pushed the door open. And it was all residue of fire extinguishers. I don't know if they used the fire extinguisher to break more windows or what, because you're in now. There's no reason why you using, unless you're just vandalizing. But then I walked down the hallway where they initially entered, where we heard the glass breaking. And I took pictures of that because I couldn't believe how I mean, not only did they broke the window, but even the wood was charred and the wood frame of the window. And it was just mind blowing. I got pictures of a statue that had blood smeared on his nose. Just, it was crazy to me.
You know, it sounds to me like on this day that, well, first of all, it sounds like what we're learning is all hands were not on deck and leadership was not in control in the way they should have, right?
Right.
And obviously, me and anyone who's been following this, covering this, or just the average citizen is seeing Michael Fanone and all these different cops on TV, you know, discussing their trauma. You know, Officer Sicknick was killed, right?
Right.
And did you know him? Did you know?
I didn't know him, but I, you know, we all have roll call.
Yeah.
In the near area, so we all see each other all the time. I didn't know him personally, but I spoke to him, you know, in the mornings.
Right. And is it true that, I mean, maybe between 150 and 200 officers were injured that day? Does that sound accurate?
Look, I would say that's a good number.
Yeah, that's what that report seems to have been. You know, obviously, I don't know the exact number. Maybe they don't either, but it you know, roughly in that area. Did you feel that the communication that was going on, right? Because you guys, what you kept saying was interesting is you were guiding the senators briskly, as you said, down the staircase, right? Getting them to a safe place, which turned out to be the holding area. But yet you can hear the radio. They can't hear the radio. Right. And radio is obviously how people communicate, right? You're on one side of the Capitol, the other, say suspect and clear, whatever, you know, I'm not trying to make it Hollywood, but right, you say, you know, Capitol clear, or, you know, strange man in corridor. Was there something off about communication on the radio on that day?
Well, the one thing we didn't hear the constant updates of the intel.
Okay. Which which you said was odd, right?
Yeah, that was the big thing. And then there's the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and they have radio call signs, so you know who's who.
Right. And
you just didn't hear the leadership the way. Now, you know, I'm a retired E8 in the military. That's a senior NCO. I've gone to school to become a leader.
Right.
Unlike Capitol Police, we don't have schools to make leaders. We have tests and we have some stripes we give them, and then they're a leader. So I didn't see leadership taking control there, other than I would say two people I heard on the radio like constantly who was at least trying to do something. I heard one of the leaderships say something after the fact. They mentioned lock down the Capitol. Oh, the Capitol was already locked down. Well, why are you getting on the radio? Is it just something you need to say because you need to say something? The person who was on there just constantly saying, send assets. I need this, I need that, you know, do this, do that. He's not even that high up in leadership. He's a lieutenant. You got assistant chiefs. We had one assistant chief out. We had two of them out there. One is an inspector. He was out there fighting with the guys. You can see him on the footage. He was out there fighting. So there are leaders, and then there are leaders. And I feel like those leaders who were in the building, if you were going to be in the building, then you needed to be on that radio, and you needed to be saying something. Sometimes even when you don't know what to say, if you said something to make us feel like you were in it with us, is better than saying nothing.
Right. Now, that radio footage, because I know we've seen a lot of video, that's not been released.
And I don't know why. And I believe that's why, because it would tell the true story. It would tell the true story. That lieutenant that was out there with that MAGA hat.
Yeah.
He was on that radio all day. He was the one saying, send all your assets. My guys are getting creamed over here. They've been sprayed with bear spray. We need more water. Please send whatever you have. I mean, it was to the point where I wanted to go over there and help, but I couldn't leave my post. But he's being called all kind of names because he put this hat on. I mean, he did what he felt he needed to do.
Right. It's just called being an undercover cop in normal terms, isn't it? What's the big deal? I mean, why is this so controversial? It's good for him. Did you? Let's go to 30,000 feet here. Okay. Well, I just want to add one thing here, piece of data. U.S. Capitol Police didn't adequately respond to frantic calls for help from officers when they pressed panic buttons on their radios seeking immediate backup as scores of pro-Trump rioters beat officers with bats, poles, and other weapons, an Inspector General's report found. Okay, this report was obtained by the Associated Press, and it offered new details about the shortcomings of law enforcement during that fateful day of January 6th. Seems to accord with what you're saying, Stephanie, pretty much. But let's go to 30,000 feet, because this has really been it's harrowing, but a really important blow by blow to understand. You don't have to answer it completely, but answer to the best of your ability. You're not under oath, by the way, and I'm not meaning to be this dramatic. Do you believe that this was a premeditated, pre-planned event on behalf of key people in our government?
I think it might have been premeditated and pre-planned, but I don't think whoever did the pre-planning and premeditating, I don't think they thought it was going to get this out of hand. I do believe that there might have been some recon done prior to.
But we've heard about some of the right-wing Congress people giving tours. I mean, what was let's go to that. What was unusual about that kind of recon? Why? Explain why? Yeah, who do Congress people give tours? Do they do that? I never took one.
All the time. Time. Yes, they give tours, and as a matter of fact, remember they said that was nothing but a tour. Right. You know, people coming into the building, they were touring the building, but no, they give tours all the time. But the difference between then and now, it was COVID. It was COVID. The building was shut down to the public.
Oh, right.
Public means any of your constituents.
Right. That's COVID tours. Right. You're not allowed no tours at this time until right. Of course.
And if you had an office in the Capitol and you needed to come into the Capitol and you might have had maybe your spouse and your children with you, fine, go ahead and go on to your office, do what you got to do. But when you have people, just people with you, and your office is in the Cannon building, and you're cutting through from the Senate side through the Capitol over to the House side, then going out and then going over to the Cannon building, you're taking a tour. And that week before, we had a lot of people doing that, and I would be walking to go on break, and I would see a congressperson or a senator giving a tour, and I'm like, "Sir, you do realize the building is closed, right?" And he says, "Oh yeah, we're heading out now." This wasn't once, this wasn't twice, this was several times. I was at the House door when I had a member come in with some people, and we got a phone call prior to that telling us, stop telling the members that they can't give tours. Just let them know that the building is closed. But we weren't allowed to tell them that they couldn't give tours.
Who came on the radio and told you that?
They called us on the phone at the House door. It was a sergeant. It was a sergeant on duty at that time. Mm-hmm. I mean, because we walk on eggshells around these members of Congress and these senators. We can't tell them they can't bring guns into the building. So we can't tell them that they can't do this and we can't do that because we're going to hurt their feelings. So we was told we couldn't tell them that they can't give to. I'm like, so I said to the sergeant, I said, well, what's the deal? I mean, we're trying to protect them, but they're not trying to protect us. They said refer them to the sergeant at arms. Take their names, and we'll bring it to the sergeant at arms.
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys are basically devoted in spending your day to the protection of those members of Congress, Senate, and the House, and especially people who've run on all the, I call it empty, phony rhetoric of back the blue and law enforcement and all that. Well, what about you guys? What about law enforcement, right? And listen, I'm somebody who thinks that the defund the police is the stupidest statement I've ever. I mean, it's the stupidest phrase to use. I understand there's problems with policing, and I get, but that makes absolutely no sense to me. I think it's bad all around. But if you're going to turn around and do the opposite of that and do the back the blue shtick, and we believe in cops and law enforcement and they're heroes, and you guys are heroes. I want to say that again and again. You specifically at the Capitol, you don't get enough of that. You don't get enough accolades. And I don't mean accolades because it's a show or you need to take a bow. You just, day in and day out, you're the cradle of our democracy, Capitol Hill, the actual physical place that I was proud to intern at 2 summers that people visit that represents so much. And, to say back the blue and suddenly not really care about the people protecting you, I think even in normal times that would happen, right? Because, congressmen, senators have egos and they just think you're there for them, not the other way around. But in this specific time, to many of whom have, either dismissed or failed to comment or distorted the commentary of cops who've been on the news and explained what they went through, from the violence and bloodshed they witnessed to the PTSD that they've endured. You're America's police department, like you said. And I know I'm saying things that but from the outside, is there really any way, and you're not on the January 6th committee, but I'm asking, it's more of a rhetorical question, but we can engage on it, to believe that this was not at least ignited, if not incited by Trump and MAGA? I mean, this wasn't Antifa, like they said. This wasn't Black Lives Matter, even though they'd like you to believe that. Right? I mean, this was a MAGA attack on the Capitol, was it not?
I would say it was. I mean, it hurts. It cuts real deep to me because a lot of those guys out there were prior military. I mean, prior military, and some of them were police, and they would talk about that. We're not Americans. We're not true Americans. Let me tell you something. I had 33 years in the military and 22 years on the police department and 5 years at the post office. I'm nothing but an American. Okay.
You've served the government your whole life. You've worked for the government, basically.
I love uniforms.
Yeah. No, come on, Stephanie. You love uniforms. It's what you want to be in law enforcement since you were young. You got a poli-sci degree. But don't you think you love America?
Absolutely.
You devoted your life to it.
And what gets me is, has the election always turned out the way I wanted to?
No.
Absolutely not. But you know what? You wake up the next day. That's who the president is, and that's it. It is what it is.
Listen, democracy,
and you respect that person,
right? See, this is something we never thought we'd have in America. We didn't have a president get defeated and not concede, and then rally 20-30% of his supporters, whatever that number is, which is in the millions, by the way, of people that still don't believe that the election was fair and square. So you know what you have? You don't. I always say people talk about democracy, and I do very in-depth episodes on it, democracy and the foundations of it. If you want a simple understanding of democracy, if I run against you, all right, you beat me in an election, right? You win, I lose. We go, like you said, we wake up and see another day. That's it. You're elected. If we run against one another and you beat me and I cry foul because I didn't win, we cease to be a democracy. Well, I mean, it's built on that, right? It's built on respect for the rule of law, because if you don't have that, which many countries don't, well, then it is a total banana republic. Then it is actually a lawless place, because anybody can challenge the results, which is what's been so toxic and corrosive and horrible about what the Trump people have done. They have undermined faith in the very thing that makes us American, is our free and fair elections, which, by the way, and I've done programs on it, our elections were never safer than in 2020. Voting places are safer. There's a cyber command that is really done a lot of preemptive work on potential meddling from Russia and Iran and outside meddling. And here we go with our people on the inside, right? Within, the enemy within, saying we're the enemy, people like me and you, and all they're doing is they don't get their way, they're going to throw the whole democracy baby out with the bathwater, right?
Right.
Astonishing. And I know that led you to, am I correct in saying you retired after this event because you thought you'd seen you'd had enough? Not that it's funny, but
you know the saying, you live to see another day. Again, I was there for 9/11. I was there for I came right after the shooting of Chestnut and Gibson.
Yep.
Chestnut, and then I saw the shooting of the young lady who had the little baby in the car, and I was there for the shooting of when Scalise got shot.
Yeah.
And I add, 2 of our police officers took bullets for. And then this. I was willing to stay initially to help my sister, and when she called me and told me don't stay for me after 9/11, after January 6th, then I said, you know what? It's time to go.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
Yeah. I mean, it almost, it can't help but shatter the faith of any citizen, but you have done, like you said, do you love America? My gosh, from the army to the post office to the Capitol Police, that is America. These are the things that, American institutions, governmental institutions, and the rule of law employ so many people. I got to ask you this too, because it's important. When I wrote an essay right after this event last year, or 2 years ago now, it was actually before I had the podcast, but I was writing for a particular magazine, and I wrote an essay. It's called "Something Seditious This Way Comes," a play on "Something Wicked This Way Comes," which is from Macbeth. But anyway, it wasn't about 3 or 4 paragraphs in where I said, if these folks had been Black Lives Matter, and I'm asking this because you're Black, if these had been Black people storming the Capitol, I think they would have been shot in cold blood. Am I wrong? They never would be scaling that wall like that, or some, being greeted or walking and, hey man, stand back. I don't think so. Am I wrong? Is that exaggerative?
Well, I would agree with you. And I tell you what, so let's say that happened and they shot 5 or 6 people.
Right.
And that would have stopped everyone else. And if you notice the same way, how this went down, the young lady who was shot, she was white, and the person who shot her was Black.
Yes, that's right.
But do you realize that after that, everybody turned around and went down the stairs and went about their business? So people ask me all the time, why didn't y'all shoot? Why didn't y'all shoot sooner? Why didn't y'all? I said, do you understand if we would have shot? First of all, let's say we did shoot, for as many people that was out there and for the amount of ammunition we had, we would have been eventually overtaken if they kept coming. And they would have kept coming. I think the other way around, I don't think people would have thought twice about shooting. I think they would have shot. It's sad to say, but it's reality. I'm gonna keep it real.
Let's keep it real. And keeping it real is the way the Capitol Police Force, is that institution inherently racist as it's run? I don't mean as because it exists. Do you feel that there's an advantage if you are white?
Well, I'm gonna tell you this. When I first got the job in '98, I was told, well, welcome to the last plantation.
Whoa.
That was my introduction.
By a white guy or Black guy?
Oh yeah. And so I was like,
wow. Okay.
Exactly. That's how I was. Okay, well, whatever. This plantation is gonna get me paid. And it has allowed for me to purchase a home, cars, retire, and live my best life. I just came back from 20 days in Italy.
Oh, lucky you. It's amazing, right? Yeah.
But I say all that to say, I have seen people who have been chosen to move up the ladder, and they don't look like me. I mean, they've come in and they have come in after me, many years after me, and surpassed me. Not because I didn't take the test, or not because I didn't aspire to be, a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, but just because I don't look the part, and I don't play the part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you've served and served proudly. One of the things that gets lost, I think, in all the reporting is, the degree of sacrifice the Capitol Police made that day. And not that it's forgotten, but I think, people think it was a sideshow or something that wasn't as crucial to the security of that. And I mean, if anything, it was the most crucial. You protected the vice president, by the way, whose own president and supporters wanted to hang him. They had a gallows out in front. So, this was serious stuff. I mean, as I said, we've never seen sort of really since the Civil War, this kind of egregious attack on the foundations of our democracy. And even in the Civil War, there was never a Confederate flag allowed in the rotunda because Abe Lincoln wouldn't allow it. But there was that day.
Mm-hmm.
Flag of treason, flag of treason, flag of traitors, flag of people who started their own country, who also tried to overthrow America, and we had to go to war because of it. And it's so interesting to draw a line from that to that. And we hadn't been breached by internal forces. It was the War of 1812 when the British did it, and that was it. To go through all this and think about it still remains unfathomable to me. And we're approaching the 2-year anniversary. As I said, this will be dropped on the 2nd-year anniversary of January 6th. Stephanie, just to sort of close out here, what do you want people to know about that day? And what do you think it's important? What do you want people to know that day? And why is that important?
So I want people to know that that when people ask me, I'll meet them and they'll say, so I would say I'm retired, and they say, oh, what did you do? And I say, oh, I was a Capitol Police. I was one of those ones who got my ass kicked on January 6th. And that's how I honestly feel and think that people see us as, we got our asses handed to us. We not that we're weak. We just, well, maybe they do think that we're weak because they feel like we should have shot. We shouldn't allow them to get that far. But I want them to know that that's not our rules of engagement. We can't shoot. We cannot shoot. We did our job that day. That's what we did. We came, for all of us who showed up, which most of us did because, we were required to, minus the people who were on leave and everything. So we respected our oath that we took. We did the best we could with what we had. So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting in closing to say that you upheld your oath, as did your colleagues, and sadly, those whose lives were lost and many who were injured. You guys upheld your oath of office, something that the president and members of Congress who were behind this potentially, or who we now know were exchanging text messages about it, all that went into this, the planning and the incitement, none of them upheld their oath. They violated their oath. And
right.
That's really the truth, and never thought we'd live to see that day. But you know what? As someone who's politically homeless, I'm an independent. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an American. I'm an American, and you are too. You're an amazing American, and your fidelity to this country and the Constitution is such a gift. And we're all so lucky to have people like you who serve. And again, your life in in public service overall is something that you've left a great legacy for. And so again, thank you for your service. Thank you for your time. And I know you will agree with me when I say to people about January 6th, never forget.
Oh,
right?
There you go. Okay.
That's all right.
Right.
I said I never. I know you'll agree with me when Dirty Moderates. I hadn't watched the interview I just gave, and given its second anniversary, I don't mean to be too somber, but I watched, those tapes again from the January 6th committee hearing, and hearing those words, and again, I meant it, that Officer Fulcher's service to this country and fidelity to the Constitution was something really special. And as I keep saying, these events were unfathomable. And I hope that that interview was instructive. I think she's never been interviewed before, so I guess you could say she's breaking news. But the more we learn, thanks to the vigilant efforts of Chairman Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and the 1-6 committee, and all that's gone into it, over 900 people have been arrested for various things: assault, obstruction of proceedings, seditious conspiracy. Stuart Rhodes was convicted. The more we hear about this, the more awful it sounds. The more insidious it sounds, the more heartbreaking it is. History has a way of washing over us at the time that we live it, because we live history, right? And we don't know moment to moment what the context of that history will be. Obviously, January 6th, everyone who witnessed it realized this was seismic. But here we are 2 years out from that fateful day, and I'm still getting choked up about it. Because I lived it, and you lived it. And 2 months prior to that, the United States of America and its electorate in record numbers went to vote out Donald Trump, to vote out MAGA, to vote this traitorous, treasonous, lying con man out. 81 million votes. Biden carried 306 electoral votes. And on that day, thanks to his urging, his rallying, his egging, his agitation, marauders, lunatics, traitors, thugs, criminals, liars, weirdos, clowns, racists, and the like literally assaulted the cradle of our democracy. As I mentioned in the interview, I worked on Capitol Hill. It's an astonishing place. I used to marvel just being in that building. You stand in the center, you look up at the rotunda. The rotunda is that center where so many people have lied in state. And you look above and you see it and you think, wow, this is the seat of a government that's 2.5 centuries old, the longest experiment in self-government that the world's ever known. And then there's a chamber on each side. I thankfully worked in both of them. And it was violated. It was vandalized. It was desecrated. Because a crybaby doesn't make him any less menacing or any less invidious. But a crybaby couldn't accept the fact that the American people didn't give him a second term. And so he carried on, and to this day has not conceded the election. And you hear somebody like Stephanie Fulcher, one of 1,600 Capitol Police officers, among the 200 or so that day what she lived through. As she said, I am nothing but an American, which is a real fuck you, and they deserve it. Served in the Army. She served in the post office. She served for 22 years to be the fourth in command. She is a hero. She is a Black woman who knows what that means to be an American and to still love the country. And then I read online today, which we've heard all along, that this is some left-wing plot. This was some Antifa thing. Nobody died. Nobody was injured. The media made this up. I know I should never be shocked anymore. I know I should never be shocked. But the corrosiveness of our climate, that even whether it's 25, 35%, whatever, thankfully most of the crazy was stopped again in November, and all the MAGA weirdos were defeated, all the cretins, as I call them, most of them, not all. You still can't believe that there's a percentage of people who still think this was not a big deal. Right? I don't know. January 6th report came out, and they blame this. Okay? Lots and lots of pages, folks, but they blame this on one man. You all saw it, right? One man ensured this happened. One man is what they said. They called what Trump did, quote, a multi-part plan to overturn the 2020 presidential election, and offered all sorts of recommendations. They can only refer these charges to the Justice Department. They can only lay out what we have to be forewarned about and how to stop it. It recommended that Congress consider whether Trump and his allies, right, should ever be allowed to run for office. Trump's announced, should he be allowed, given that there's a 14th Amendment ban on insurrectionists. The report says again, quote, the central cause of January 6th was one man, former President Donald Trump, whom many others followed. He's not the first strong man, as Ruth Ben-Ghiat, the great scholar who's been on the show and author of a book called Strong Men, would say. He's an autocrat trying to commandeer a very old but very fragile democracy. So January 6th committee went on for 18 months. It was an 18-month inquiry. They formally accused Trump of inciting that insurrection. Whether that reaches the level of criminal accountability, we don't know. It can't, this report, of course, just to be clear, can't compel federal prosecutors to take any action, but it sends a signal, a huge signal, right, to Congress that this is an attack. Of course, we should all be proud of everybody who tried to stop it that day. And what Stephanie saw and endured, I think she speaks for all of us. Because she, like her fellow officers, took an oath, as she said. And because she is a great American, she upheld her oath. Here's what we need to learn, in my opinion, from Officer Fulcher. And it actually is a quote Liz Cheney said in the final report. She wrote this, and this is my answer for those who are wondering, what is my interview with Stephanie? Again, thank you, Stephanie, for doing this, and for participating and sharing your patriotism. It was your work, but in our context, which is so skewed, it's beyond patriotic. Because most people, majority of the country, can't believe this happened. Here's what we learn. Here's what Liz Cheney wrote Our institutions are only strong when those who hold office are faithful to our Constitution. She continued, quote, part of the tragedy of January 6th is the conduct of those who knew that what happened was profoundly wrong, but nevertheless try to downplay it, minimize it, or defend those responsible. We also learned that we absolutely learned that our institutions are very strong. Okay. And look, even in November, we keep expecting apocalyptic results, and democracy has held. Democracy caught its breath this year. I wrote a piece on it. I did an episode on it. Yep. Trump did lose in 2020. Remember, he only got in 2016 by the hair of his chinny chin chin. There was no mandate for Trumpism. They are a minority of the country. A loud minority that's holding up the House of Representatives right now till they get even if McCarthy pulls it through, and he may, they're going to get they've made him concede to a number of right-wing lunacy procedural positions, and they'll be able to throw him out at moment's notice. He's going to have to give that away to get the vote. He's already failed 13 times. But we must remember that even though our institutions held, there is more that we can do to fortify them. And the January 6th committee report goes to that extent too. Of course, they can't pass laws. They can't make criminal referrals, right? Excuse me, they can make criminal referrals, but they can't prosecute. They've endorsed overhauling the Electoral Count Act. That was the law that Trump tried to use to say that Pence had the authority to reject the electors, the slates of electors, and to cling to power. They can do that. Also, they should really be looking at the Insurrection Act and strengthening the enforcement of what the 14th Amendment stipulates, which is a ban on insurrectionists holding office. I hope you guys know that when Lincoln was elected against all odds in 1860, and, by 1861, the Confederacy was formed, 11 states seceded, beginning with South Carolina. There were people who were expelled from Congress. Right? They were expelled from Congress because they were insurrectionists, because they violated their oath. And that is something that we come back to, the basis of it. Officer Fulcher, an honorable person, all of her colleagues, all the people who've served this country, right? Take an oath. They take an oath. President of the United States, I do solemnly swear. He or she puts their hand on that Bible every 4 years, right? And it's the oath of office, which about 137 or so House representatives on January 6th did not certify. They violated their oath by saying, nope, Biden didn't win, or they wouldn't certify all the states. Then what is that, 8 or 9 or 10 senators, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, all those people. Nope. This was not a free and fair election, though it was the freest and fairest election that we had according to all expertise and all data in our history, right? And there's an oath, and Trump didn't give a shit about it. What's going on in the House of Representatives always makes me think of what I always said to people, and I know people who did. We all do, who voted for Trump. Some of them I love dearly. See these people in the well of the House of Representatives, right? This ain't conservative. It's nothing to being a Republican. That's been bastardized and shat on and all this. These people don't give a shit about you. If they did, they wouldn't be 4 days in to the stupid carnival they're trying to throw, the fucking fair, where they're just smiling and laughing and nominating Trump and giggling and acting like this is some child's play. They took an oath. Meanwhile, no one can take the oath to be sworn in because of this crap. And Trump never gave a shit about you. Forget the fact he's been a crook all his life. He didn't care. He still doesn't care. He can grift off you. He thinks those of you that are religious are morons. He thinks you are fools. Yeah, he does. I'm not a religious man, but he thinks you guys are idiots. Read Michael Cohen's book, and you know he does. He doesn't care about how many women he cheats on. He doesn't care about any norm or value or precept that he violates. These are his people. Just as he incited this insurrection, he has incited the absolute buffoonery that's going on right now in Washington. They've adjourned until 10 p.m. tonight before they make another decision. As I said, even if McCarthy pulls it through, he is hostage. And again, minority of the country, they only have a 4-seat majority, but he is hostage to the rabid caucus, to the Trumpublicans. That's what these insurrectionists were. It's all the same kit and caboodle. Okay? Remember, Trump has enablers. Okay? January 6th report, which of course said it was one man. The report went into great detail, and I'm sifting through most of it. It's very long. I admittedly won't read it all. It went to great deal about all his supporting cast of lieutenants, all his lackeys, his followers, his devotees, as I call them, his cultists, right? Mark Meadows, his final chief of staff, his lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, perpetrated all this. Jeffrey Clark, Ken Chesborough, all of them were named as potential co-conspirators in terms of Trump's attempt to cling to power and not cede that office. The first time we haven't had a peaceful transfer of power. That 4-year peaceful transfer of power, though this won't resonate anymore with the MAGA cretins, the 4-year transfer of presidential power was called a miracle by Ronald Reagan. Right? Ronald Reagan. Who's right? Who has no place in this party. The people like Jeffrey Clark said, the January 6th committee is over with the Republicans anyway. It's the last gasp. Crap. So, again, the lies about that day, the fake spate of electors, the pro-Trump electors in states that Biden won, right? Trump's attempt to pressure the Justice Department and Mike Pence. How Trump summoned the mob. And then did nothing to stop them for 187 minutes. I absolutely do not feel that the Capitol Police got their asses kicked on January 6th. As Stephanie Fulcher said, they took an oath to follow protocol. And that's what they did. People watch too many movies, okay? It's not go in there with a gun and act like a lunatic because they did what they were supposed to do. Listen to Officer Fulcher. I don't know what the question's implications are, but no, this isn't a Western. This isn't, wow, here come the bad guys. Let's pull out our guns, draw, partner. No. Think about what goes into that. I know people listen to me and me too. I'm a Second Amendment supporter. I believe in gun control. Better believe that. But I believe you have a right to own a gun. But owning a gun comes with responsibility. I'm not in law enforcement. But people like Stephanie Fulcher are patriots who have been part and parcel of the People's Force. How about the fact that they're there to protect the members of Congress, and the members of Congress, as she said, weren't there to protect them? That's what loving America is about. Loving America isn't about hating everybody in it. Hating that Biden won. Hating that it's going to be less white. Hating that there's more ethnic diversity. Hating that young people are free to love how they love. Free to express themselves in their sexuality and their gender identity. That's what's happening here. And this crowd doesn't like it. They are an incredible shrinking minority. They are a tyranny of the minority in the fact of what they're doing in the House of Representatives. But never forget that Fulcher and her colleagues and everybody that day who did the right thing, and of course, everybody who went on the January 6th, served on the January 6th committee, are speaking for what's really patriotism, what really is love of country. All these terms have become bywords and catchphrases and crappy rhetoric over the years, right? Abused and sullied by people that don't believe in them. And I know for a fact that there are many, many, many independents like myself, many conservatives, many Republicans who did not want, who of course are appalled by this, voted for Biden again, kept the Senate blue. We know there's 7 to 10%, 7 to 11% roughly, depending upon the state, where Republicans showed up in greater numbers than Democrats. This is true. I know that you've heard some other narratives. This is the narrative. This isn't a narrative. Excuse me. This is the data. They showed up to vote for Democrats because they are appalled. When you look around and say, what's wrong with these people? What is wrong with these specific people? But there are many of your countrymen and women who are not Democrats, who do not want to be on this road. They know the road to hell is paved with Trumpian intentions. The January 6th committee interviewed over 1,000 witnesses and looked at, imagine this, more than 1 million pages of documentation. I don't know if you know this, but it's in the report. You know how I'm saying Trump doesn't care about you? He doesn't believe in anything. He was a pro-choice Democrat. He was palling around with Democrats. He gave lots of money to Hillary, loved her as a senator. He gave money to Chuck Schumer, his supposed nemesis, butting heads in the 4 years Trump was in office. Trump didn't even believe all the goddamn claims, which led to an attack that could have taken someone like Stephanie's life, did take Brian Sicknick's life, injured 140 to 200 people. Yeah. Is he a scorned, malignant narcissist? Yeah. Does he believe in dividing the country? Absolutely. Did he believe in everything he's saying? No. Matter of fact, it's documented about how a conference call 2 weeks after the election with Sidney Powell, you remember her, that idiot lawyer, she asserted that communist money, do you remember this, flowed through Venezuela, Cuba, and China to interfere with the election. By the way, again, I had election security analysts on my show. They absolutely preemptively guarded against meddling from these countries, so that's absolutely not true. But here's the thing. Here's what Trump said. He muted his speakerphone, laughed at Powell, and said, "This does sound crazy, doesn't it? Ha, 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 ha." Said he likes the crazies. Well, he got the crazy. He unleashed a fury and an animosity and a rancor and a division in this country. He really did. In policy, in procedure, in behavior. It's there. The wrath. People acting like complete lunatics across the country because they feel they can. It was said Trump is the id of America, the Freudian term, acting out that animalistic self. Well, you got it. And he led those people to put Officer Fulcher, her colleagues, and America in harm's way. And on the second anniversary of that fateful day, I believe the most awful day for our democracy in my lifetime, I'm here to tell you we will never forget it. Folks, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching my amazing interview with Stephanie Fulcher. Stephanie Fulcher, Officer Fulcher, thank you for doing this. I know you haven't done it for anybody else. I hope we've given you the due you deserve. Thank you for your service, your fidelity to America. You love this country, and so do I. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. We have so much content coming your way. We already have over 80 episodes for you to listen to right now at dirtymoderate.com. I have a Substack, so I write a newsletter every week. That's also dirtymoderate.com. Depending upon what platform you get your podcast on, we're on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Pandora, many. So you can find us there. In the meantime, on this day, I know we will never forget, and thank you for joining me, Patriots, Dirty Moderates. Stay dirty, stay moderate, and stay safe.